Hello everybody, welcome to the Church in Action. I'm Lavon Seletawo. As a member of a particular society, a lot is expected of you because the society has norms. His Lordship, Matthew Hassan Kukah, discusses with Emeka Obieke on societal values. Sit back and learn a thing or two from this discussion.
Hello once again. This is Asking You In on this segment of our program this morning, The Catholic Perspective. I am Emeka Obieke. This morning we have a very important guest on this program. His Lordship, the Bishop of Sokoto Diocese, Most Rev.Matthew Hassan Kukah. Your Lordship, you're welcome to our program this morning.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, this morning we'll be looking at some burning issues across the country, especially the one that is on the front burner now, which is the child marriage. Your Lordship, what is your take on this, and what is the position of the Church on that?
For me, it's not so much a question of the position of the Church as, one, what the issues are. I don't think the issues are necessarily about child marriage. There are issues relating to marriage as an institution. And then, more or less, what the Constitution says, whether according to what Muslims say, at least as represented by Yerema's perspective, is really and truly what Islam says. My take is that it really is not a question of what the Catholic Church says or what Muslims say. First of all, we have a country governed we don't have a theocracy, we have a democracy. So that means what Catholics think and what Muslims think, important as it may be, the Constitution is pretty clear. If any of these things are in conflict with the Constitution takes precedence. So for me, I think that there's still a lot of issues for us to debate, and it's really about the status of other conflicting laws and what the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria says. And I would like us to debate this issue not necessarily as Christians and Muslims, because that is the easiest way of losing an argument in Nigeria. Clearly, as you can see, if you've been following the narratives, there are many Muslims who don't think that what Senator Yerema says represent what they think.
Okay, so it's not just a religious issue, but it's an issue of the child, the human being, and the country.
Well, it's an issue of family. It's an issue of family. I mean, we've not finished discussing the issue of gay and lesbian marriages. Whether, no matter the legislation is there, but it still doesn't mean that people are not talking about it. It's about really the totality of our lives, and where does religion fit in? Where does culture fit in? What kind of society are we organizing? Who has the power to decide what finally happens to our lives as individuals? What happens to our children? What is their future? And it is really not the case. I mean, parents don't even, the rights of parents are quite, in very many respects, limited as to what they can do and what they cannot do to their children. There are regulations, the Child Rights Act. Parents know traditionally at the time you and I were born, I'm much older than you are, so I can say the time we were born. To flog your son was not a problem. To flog your daughter is not a problem. Corporal punishment was not a problem. To flog your wife was not a problem. But most of all those things are being taken away from individuals. You no longer have the right to say you're going to keep your child away from school because he's your son or your daughter. You don't have the right to say you're going to refuse to present your child for inoculation because he's your child and I'm free to decide what I want. So really it's about the common good, and I think this is a good time for the Church to also present its basket of values, which have stood the Catholic Church in particular. They've stood us in good state because there is no other institution living that has the experience of the Catholic Church, whether it's in how society is organized, how diplomacy is conducted, how family life is. I mean, so the challenge really is that it is our time to step forward and not force anybody to be Catholic, but to just say that we've had a long experience with how societies ought to be organized.
Now, Your Lordship, with all these dynamics, so to speak, in our society, do you think it is better for the child? All these new laws and the rest of them, these new activities coming up, suppressing the old ones. Do you think we are better off now with what we have?
No, it's not. For me, and people have made the point. In fact, a lot of people who have talked about this have talked about it in relation to, they're calling the people who are agitating for these pedophiles. The argument is, people will say, well, if a child is 12 years old, it's free to get married and so on. And that if a child is at a particular age, this is what I can do with her. Now, again, like I said, we're not living in an environment that we have total control over. We have a government in place, and the government has a responsibility to decide on a set of laws that regulate human behavior, what is acceptable and what is not acceptable, that regulate behaviors, that impact negatively or positively on the common good. So, for me, the real issue is, an individual is free to say, for example, that according to, I'm convinced that my culture allows me to marry off my 10-year-old child. Now, it is the responsibility of the government to say that a child at the age of 10 ought to have a future. And it depends on the kind of, the regime of laws that a government has in place to nurture children. That is why I commend quite a few state governments in Nigeria that have decided, for example, that if you look at the Millennium Development Goals, one of the key points is how do you arrest the high mortality rates of women dying at birth, while giving birth, children dying at birth, and so on and so forth. So if you are nurturing this generation, it must be for a future. My own view is that because the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and those who run the affairs of state have not occupied the public space with enough force, so to say, that the Constitution has become the reference point for everybody. This is evidence of the weakness of government. This is why everybody is now saying this is what they want to do. If you have a wife and 4 or 5 children, for example, and you're going to go to church in the morning, you cannot say to your children who are aged 5, 6, 7, and 3, let them decide what they want to wear. You will never get to go to church if the children are the ones to decide what they are going to wear. So the real issue is, what kind of laws does the Nigerian government have to protect these people? Because today it is children, tomorrow it will be old people, tomorrow it will be people, and next tomorrow it will be people with disability. So it's really a question of what kind of citizens are you preparing for the future?
Now, the position that the National Assembly have taken, or seems to have taken, on the issue of this child marriage is in direct conflict with a lot of opinions outside. And this is heating up the polity. How do you think this could be resolved?
Well, the problem is that Nigerians have a very limited attention span. So if you talk of the polity hits up very cools very easily, because tomorrow people are thinking of another thing. We don't have, and this is one of our greatest tragedies. We don't have a long attention span. Next tomorrow people will yawn and turn to another page. Mm-hmm. But as you can see, it seems to me that even the members of the National Assembly themselves are in a bit of a state of confusion as to, do people really know what they were signing for? A lot of people who thought they were signing yes are signing no. People who were signing no thought they were signing yes. But notwithstanding that, the National Assembly can make bad laws. Okay, it can make bad laws. It's not peculiar to Nigeria. The Constitution can contain bad laws. This is why you have the judiciary. This is why you have the courts, and you have the Supreme Court as the ultimate interpreter of the spirit and letter of a constitution. Those who write the Constitution can never foretell what will happen tomorrow. It's not possible for you to think about the kind of things that may happen 20 or 30 years from now. And that is why every generation will then have to begin to deal with, okay, the people who wrote the Constitution meant well, but under this circumstance, this is what we now see. Those who wrote the American Constitution didn't consider black people, so they couldn't vote. Now we have an American president. So a constitution is dynamic, but even if you have a bad law, that bad law can be struck down by a Supreme Court. So it's not, for me, I'm not too worried about I mean, it's important that we have good laws. But as you know, Nigeria has never been in shorter. I mean, our constitution is perhaps the most voluminous in the world. I don't know if any country has the kind of constitution that we have. You can read the American Constitution in a question of, not very many minutes.
Okay, Your Lordship, these days there are a lot of cases of armed robbery, kidnapping, youth restiveness, and all sorts of vices. Do we attribute it to the dynamics of government, the dynamic of leadership, or what? Is it just normal that it's happening now, or is something wrong somewhere?
I don't know I don't know how old you are. The first armed robber who was shot was not shot in the year 2000. He wasn't shot in 1990. He wasn't shot in 1980. Shot in the early 70s. Armed robbery started almost immediately after the Civil War. Every society that has the kind of inequalities that Nigeria has, any society that creates the distortions in allocation of resources that Nigeria has, will suffer the consequences. So for me, youth restlessness, or whatever you call it, armed robbery, all these are symptoms. They are not a disease. Okay, they are not a disease. They are a symptom. They are a symptom that something is congenitally wrong. And what is wrong with the Nigerian situation is that every armed robber feels a sense of righteousness, in the sense that this small thing when I achieve now, they halam before. Let me tell you something that I read in the paper yesterday about a real story. I think it was in the Sunday Vanguard, of an armed robber who stopped a family, and I think they had 45 or 35,000 naira. And the woman had just given birth. And so they struggled with the armed robber. They covered the baby. The armed robber collects all their money and then looks inside the car. Unfortunately, the baby begins to cry. So he looks inside the car and sees the baby. And he says, "Oh, why are you, choking this baby?" So as a result of mercy, he actually gives the baby 20,000 naira.
Out of the money.
Yes. And he says, do you think that a gentleman like myself, I can hurt this baby? So even the people who are involved in all this have a feeling that, the Nigerian situation, we've gotten to a point in which the clerk who steals tells you, you see the one when my got a thief now. So it's a whole systemic thing. That's why, as I said, you cannot reduce it to whether government is effective or not effective. It's that we have a very serious problem. How we surgically get around resolving it, nobody can give you a very quick answer. But I've always tried to treat these social convulsions as a symptom, not a disease. The disease is in the structural composition of Nigeria that allows inequalities of this nature to happen. So whether if China ends up like Nigeria is, or the Japanese, or America, or you get the same thing.
How do we get to the disease instead of looking at the symptoms?
By diagnosis. By diagnosis. And this is why, and the people who do diagnosis are scholars, academicians, intellectuals. We have got a lot of people with the professional competence. But this is a country where to be a minister for health, to be a minister for agriculture, to be a minister for this, that, and the other, it's what the president decides. And sometimes it depends on the kind of muscle that you bring to bear. So there are a lot of square pegs in round holes. And there are different people doing different kinds of things. You have a University of Abuja, you have universities all over the place. The very few policymakers are consulting universities. Elsewhere, it's not like that. If you go to other parts of the world where things are working pretty well, it is the research and development components of research institutions that are doing the kind of work that pharmaceutical companies are. It's not pharmaceutical companies that are producing drugs. They just come up with the money. China, in 20 years, China has taken out almost 500 million people out of poverty. China doesn't worship God. At least that's what they say. They are atheists. We, that God is everywhere, we are still unable to get out of the pit of corruption. So the kind of God talk that you have in Nigeria is not a redemptive God talk. A lot of the issues we're talking about are not about God. All right? They're not about God. They are just about incompetence and inefficiency that is appropriating God as an excuse. So when you see all these people clapping and dancing and so on, a man who has won a fraudulent election knows that he stole the election, but the next Sunday morning he's still dancing to church. Somebody who is stealing tons of money that doesn't belong to him, the next day is dancing and going to church. So all these things are not expressions of God is not. God is on his throne. Okay? And in other countries, he's allowed to do the things that God has been doing. Not to come and take responsibility for bad governance or good governance, as it is the case in Nigeria. So if you ask what is the church supposed to do? Our responsibility as church, we help to bring the country democracy. We were shouting when we didn't have a democracy. Now there are elected officials. I'm not saying I don't have a role to play, but you and I now have a choice. This is what is happening in Egypt. You throw your ballot, you decide what happens. I mean, things are not going well, you decide what to do. It's not what a bishop tells you to do. It's a question of realizing the potency of your ballot paper. But here in Nigeria, you cast your ballot and you line up and see what the big man is going to do for you. The Egyptians are showing you very clearly what you mean by the power of the people and the power of the vote. Nigerians are not prepared to stand in the rain. And to that extent, we are just reaping what we are sowing. So it's not about God coming. God is not going to come from heaven to clear the wrath of Nigeria. We are the ones to roll our sleeves.
That's a very tall one. Well, finally, Your Lordship, your advice to the people watching this program right now.
There are special advisors who are being paid by so I don't know. I'm not sure I know what you want me. I'm not sure I know what you want me to say. If you want me to advise my people as Catholics, I will say what I've often said. You know, elsewhere, in countries that have rather insignificant Catholic populations, to the extent that nobody offers the quality of education that we offer, nobody offers the quality of health services that we offer. So the truth of the matter is that nobody has turned out the kind of manpower running governments, running bureaucracies the way the Catholic Church has done. So for me, it's that the Catholics who are watching the program must know that we have a challenge. We can't fix this country. We can't change this country. Not necessarily by becoming president or whatever, but we have enough in what the church has taught us, to make Nigeria a different place. If only we decided and make a concerted effort. And thank God, one, this is the year of faith. And two, this is a period of new evangelization. If we decide we want to rethink politics differently, think economics differently, think business differently, and think differently about how a society is organized, we can change our country.
Thank you, Your Lordship. Well, it's up to us to think differently and to react and respond differently. That way, we're going to change our society. Take that word home. Well, for the past minutes, I've been discussing with His Lordship, the Bishop of Sokoto Diocese, Most Reverend Matthew Hassan Kukah. Thank you, Your Lordship, for being our guest this morning. Thank you very much. And you, viewer, thank you for being there for us. But keep staying there, because the rest of the programs or the segments that will come your way on this program are still there. Please don't go away. Thank you.
That was Emeka Obieki and His Lordship Matthew Hassan Kukah, the Bishop of Sokoto Diocese. Reverend Father Solomon Uko, Reverend Father Thomas Hassan, and Reverend Father John Jimo celebrated their 10 years anniversary as priests of the Catholic Church. It was a wonderful occasion as they did that in a Holy Mass.
It was a joyful day for Reverend Father Solomon Uko, the parish priest of St. Charles Luanga Catholic Church, Apu, Reverend Father Thomas Hassan, the parish priest of St. Martin's Catholic Church, Mabushi, and Reverend Father John Jimo, the parish priest of Sacred Heart Catholic Church, Gwawalada, as they celebrated their 10th year priestly anniversary on the 2nd of August 2013. The event started with a Holy Mass at St. Charles Luanga Catholic Church, Apu, with Most Reverend Dr. Anthem Umorin, the Auxiliary Bishop of Abuja Archdiocese, priest brothers, religious and family members in attendance. In his homily, Monsignor Kenneth Inang spoke on the importance of appreciating God and the office of a priest.
Today is a mass of thanksgiving, and we say thank you, God, for the life of the priesthood in them, for calling them to be His messengers of peace, messengers of reconciliation, and tying the wounds of those torn apart by sin.
There was a thanksgiving by the celebrants and friends in appreciation of God's faithfulness. occasion was also used to launch Refreshing Melody, a musical album by Reverend Father Solomon Kukah, dedicated to the cause of the less privileged in the society. The reception witnessed refreshment for guests, cultural display, and cutting of the anniversary cake.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
The Auxiliary Bishop, Most Reverend Dr. Anselm Umorin, and the celebrant spoke to our reporter.
It's a wonderful feeling. I thank God for this day He has made. And 10 good years in the mission, and the Lord has been sustaining us with His grace. And today we are happy to be alive to celebrate. I just look at the manifestation of God's power in us. As I was in the church, see the weather is very clement, and the Lord really wanted us to appreciate Him today for what He's doing in us. So to us, and three of us are like a trinity, presenting the church. So I'm happy to be one of them to celebrate today, 10 years.
I'm so happy that today I'm marking 10 years as a priest, in the sense that I believe I was called by God. The journey, we started many of us, but along the way, some could not make it. So I became priest, not because I'm so good, but by the mercy of the Lord. So I'm thanking God and then counting my blessings. There were challenges along the way, but the grace of God was able to carry me through. So today here we are rejoicing over this anniversary. So we are all happy.
I'm so happy considering the fact that God has given me the opportunity to serve in His vineyard for the past 10 years. And that for the past 10 years, I have no regret whatsoever being a priest. But rather I'm filled with joy to know that I have the opportunity to serve God, and not only to serve God, but to serve Him also in my brothers and sisters and in the flock that has been put in my care.
Learning something new is exciting. On the What to Do segment, a security expert, Peter Okpara, tells us on how to protect our homes. Sit back and learn a thing or two.
Hello viewers, my name is Brother Peter Chima Okpara. I am the Chairman and Chief Executive of Covenant Security Limited, a security company located here in Abuja. I am here to give you a general home safety and security tips for your safety. Always ensure that you create an illusion that somebody is in your house when you are not in. Always ensure that all your doors are burglary proofed. If you have an unexpected knock at your door, please make sure you check who is at your door, and do not send your underage daughter or son to go and find out who is at the door. That could be very dangerous. Do not keep your house key for your wife or for your house help when you are going out at the doormat in front of your house or on the potted plant in your house. It could be very, very dangerous. When you are discussing a business or answering a phone inside your bedroom, please lower your voice when you are mentioning millions and millions, because you wouldn't know who is outside. Do not leave a note for your wife or for anybody or for your friends at the gate or at the doorpost when you are away from your house. That could be very, very dangerous. That will send a signal to the burglars that nobody is in. Finally, ensure that you employ the services of a trained security guard in your house. Do not employ someone you do not know Maybe he helped you when you were packing into that house newly to mop the floor, to clean the house, or to pack in your load, and you want to engage him. Do not take that risk. Thank you for being part of this program. Until we come your way next time, my name is Brother Peter Chima Opera. Thank you.
Thank you so much for letting us come into the screens of your homes. As we round up this program, if you want to be part of us through sponsorship in any of the segments, please do contact us on our telephone numbers on the screen. Until I come your way again, same time next week, I'm Rev. Matthew Hassan Kukah. Take care and God bless you.